Hi, my name is Fritz Erickson. I'm a professor of psychological sciences at Northern Michigan University. I'm also a GLP-1 user, and I've been on GLP, specifically tirzepatide, since February 1st, 2025. So I approached this issue, one, as a research scientist, quite interested in the psychological impacts, but also I'm interested in it from my own personal story and journey. When I started down this path on February 1st of 2025, before I did, I spent quite a bit of time looking at the research, certainly the medical research, and I also spent time looking at the psychological side of all of this. What do we know about the psychology of GLP-1s? And unfortunately, we didn't know a whole lot. Now, we know a lot more now than we did then. But I found this to be a very fascinating subject. And so I put together a research team made up of myself, a psychologist, a sociologist who's very interested in studying the dynamics of GLP-1s on families and interpersonal relationships, a medical doctor, a board certified obesity specialist who's practiced with hundreds of patients. Um, I've also included two wonderful students as research assistants, one of whom is a GLP-1 user. And her story, starting at 17 on the GLP-1, is a very interesting story and a very different story than myself, who I'm 68 years old. And so we set about a process of really delving into this research because we felt there were really three aspects that are associated with effective use of GLP-1s. First of all is the medication itself. It's a pretty remarkable medication. It changes, seems to me, every day. I read something new about new drugs coming out, new procedures, even new potential surgeries that are coming out that can have an impact. It's a remarkable story to watch all of this. Secondly, anybody who uses a GLP-1 learns pretty quickly that this is not a magic pill, not a magic shot. This is simply a matter of giving people the tools to be able to fulfill and meet whatever their goals happen to be. And diet and exercise, that whole lifestyle picture is vitally important. It doesn't happen without it. But the third side, the so far, somewhat neglected area is understanding the psychological impacts of GLP-1s, both in terms of the impact that are related to potential negative side effects. What's the research on depression? What's the research on suicide ideation? Are there any other mental health kinds of challenges? What about positive mental health challenges? So there's a whole side of that psychological story. There's also the side of the story about how to effectively approach the use of GLP-1s to get the benefits that people want. Now, we all know if you've been on a GLP-1 for any period of time at all, everyone's story is different. What way worked for me may not work for you. And that's really an important understanding. But there's still, even within that, there's some important patterns and some important lessons that we can learn. So those are important considerations. So we set about a process of gathering as many stories as we possibly could. And to date, we have over 560 stories of people. And we just ask a very simple set of questions. One, we just want to know, we wanted to know from people to tell us about their particular journey, just as however they wanted to tell us. And people talked about all kinds of interesting aspects of how GLP-1 has impacted their lives, both in terms of their health issues, in terms of mental health issues, in terms of family dynamics. And that's the research that we're looking at. By asking these broad-based questions, we needed a statistical method that would allow us to be able to make broad generalizations. But when you do qualitative research, it can be really helpful, really insightful, but it poses the problem of not being as generalizable to a larger population. So what we decided to do is recruit a data scientist. And we brought in a very talented young data scientist who specializes in natural language processing, machine learning, and AI to do this kind of research. And was able to take broad, lengthy sets of textual data and convert it and be able to draw broad generalizations and look for patterns of behaviors. That study in and of itself on how that is done is truly remarkable. But with all of this and this kind of really what I consider a high quality research team, we're able to really delve into the psychological side. And that's what this whole our podcast, this whole YouTube channel is about, sharing the kinds of things that we've learned, both from a personal perspective. I'll share my story, knowing full well that my story is different than your story. But nevertheless, when we share stories, I think we help gain insight. Last thing I will say is I'm not a therapist. I'm a psychological researcher. So I don't do therapy work, and I'm certainly not your therapist. And I really encourage people, if they're facing any mental health challenges and would like to understand the psychology as it's impacting them, go to your own mental health provider. Talk to your own medical provider, your physicians, your whoever it is that you're getting the medication from, because I think that's a very important part of this whole journey. I hope you enjoy the videos. I hope you find that they're of some use. And if you're interested at all in participating in our research, we collect it all. And you're welcome to go to NMU, Northern Michigan University, nmu.edu/GLP1. You come to a very simple website, and we just ask people to do a couple of things. Just tell us your story. But don't tell us any personally identifiable information. We don't want to know your name. We don't want to know any of that background. We do want to know a few bits of demographic information, because we want to know, are there differences between males and females? Are there differences between psychological differences based on age? I mean, a few hosts of things like that I think could be quite helpful. So again, I hope you enjoy all of this. And I hope you find your GLP journey and your psychological journey to be as successful as we've seen from so many. Thanks.